Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. My name is Justin DeBaggis. I'm the Director of Sales here at Bold Group for our Financial Accounting Division. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar topic is Actionable Insights via SedonaSync. Just a few house cleaning items before we get rolling here. The webinar is in lecture format, so all of you will be muted. The webinar tools are available in the window on the right-hand side of your screen. So to collapse your screen, you can use the right arrow, click to the side, and that will collapse it for you. And then to ask questions throughout the webinar, you can go into the bottom, type in your question, and hit send. We'll try to answer all the questions as they flow in, and then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. Anything that we don't cover, I'll make sure that we reach out individually to you. We are recording this webinar today. We will be making it available, so we'll be sending out the recorded copy, and we'll also be posting the recorded copy to BoldU. So if you are not familiar with BoldU, please go to learn.boldgroup.com, and request access, and we will get you into our library of videos and other knowledge base and resources that you can access at any time. So on with the webinar. Today we have a distinct pleasure of introducing Don Farber, who is the co-founder of SedonaSync technology. He has 25 years in the business process software industry, and Don's focus has really been to technologies that identify, deliver, and respond to organizational's critical business activities. He's located outside of Seattle, Washington. Don's a frequent speaker on the subject of business activity monitoring solutions and operational business intelligence, and he can usually be found as a presenter on the subjects of software conferences worldwide. For those of you who were at the initial conference when we released SedonaSync, Don was our main speaker and main attraction at the event. So I know he will deliver an amazing presentation today. Presenting with him is our very own Wayne O'Keefe, who is a data specialist level 2 support tech for the SedonaOffice platform. Wayne's been in the industry for over 20 years. He was an operations manager and director of alarm services for 2 different SedonaOffice companies. And he's been known to provide amazing insight into various processes and reporting options during users conferences. And if anyone has been in my past FSU conferences, you know Wayne is the guy who is typically running those conferences when he was on the in the industry side himself. So we're very pleased for these 2 presenters. I'm very excited to walk through the webinar. So with that being said, I will hand the reins over to you, Don, and make you the presenter here.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Justin, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. So let me bring up my presentation, and then we'll begin our conversation. And Justin, just do me the favor to confirm that my voice is coming through loud and clear.
You're all set, Don.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. And again, thank you for spending some time with me today. I've been involved in SedonaSync, the technology, for over 20 years. As Justin mentioned, I'm one of the founders of the technology, and 20 plus years later, I still get a big kick out of how folks are using it. In this talk today, we know that we're talking with some folks who already own SedonaSync, as well as some folks who don't yet own it. For those existing owners, you'll be seeing the latest version of SedonaSync. That's version 10. I think you'll be very pleased by a lot of what you see. I also do want to encourage my colleague Wayne to jump into my conversation whenever he sees fit. I enjoy having his expertise alongside mine. So with that, let's get right to it. So you heard Justin earlier refer to this thing called actionable insight, which is a curious term. It actually refers to an organization's ability to detect or have insight into their business activities while automatically responding to those critical time-sensitive business conditions. So it is that combination of detection and response that really makes up this term actionable insight. If we drill down just a little bit further into what is it that actionable insight actually gives an organization today, we can identify three things. Number one, actionable insight is that smoke detector for your business data. And personally, I love that analogy of a smoke detector. It's so appropriate for SedonaSync because every organization deals with exceptions, anomalies, etc. And by having a system that automatically identifies and responds to those exceptions, it's a huge time saver as well as money saver. But I think what's very important to keep in mind about SedonaSync and about this concept of actionable insight is that action is not based on just exceptions and anomalies. There are a lot of things that take place on a daily basis, new service tickets being logged, appointments being changed, etc. These are just the daily happenings of everyday life with SedonaOffice. And so if we take a look at those individual tasks, and we'll take a look at some in just a few minutes, we can see that some of them are currently being done manually and we can automate them. And if we automate them, we end up with the third of the three bulleted items on the current slide, which is that we free up staff time for those tasks that uniquely require the human brain. As I like to say, if a task can be automated, it should be automated. We'll talk more about that. So let's talk about these two different sides of actionable insight. The first is for the automation of repetitive tasks. I mentioned when new service tickets are created, they need to be disseminated. That information needs to flow out to certain people to let them know that there are new tickets and what they're about and who they're for. Likewise, invoicing. When invoices need to get sent out, if right now someone is manually producing and sending those invoices, let's talk about automating that process. And what you tend to see when you look at this side of SedonaSync, the automation of repetitive tasks, is that a lot of them are around your standard forms, documents, and reports. So if you or your colleagues today are spending a lot of time generating these, reviewing them, distributing them, that's an area that you can look at automating. And I'd like to focus in on just one of them for now, which is invoicing. Because as a business, if you sell products or services to your customers, well, chances are then you have to invoice those same customers. So I'd like to ask you the following questions. Whose job is it to review the reports of invoices coming due? And then whose job is it to actually generate those invoices, to send them out to your customers, and via what methods, email or other methods? And if some of those invoices end up not getting paid, well, whose job is it to keep watch over those delinquent clients? And if a delinquent client is delinquent for too long, well, once again, whose job is it to figure out what we want to do with those clients? Do we want to put them on credit hold? Do we want to resend them a copy of their statement, etc.? So when you consider these questions, if your answers to one or more of them is, well, that's me, that's my job, or that's one of my colleagues' jobs, then we'd recommend that you consider a system like SedonaSync because it automates these tasks, thus increasing your organization's available human time for those tasks that uniquely require the human brain to help grow your business. Okay, so now let's look at the flip side of SedonaSync, which is that exception management part of your day. So it's pretty much proven that every organization in business today spends time doing analysis to look for exceptions, anomalies, etc. And if you don't think that you spend much or any time doing this, well, I have a very easy question to ask you that I think can answer that. If I were to sit in your desk chair and open up one of your top desk drawers, what are the chances that I'd find at least one highlighter pen in your desk? And usually, if you're like me, it's in yellow. And the reason is that we get reports dumped on our desks, and then when time permits, we go through those reports, one page at a time, yellow highlighter in hand, highlighting just those items, those exceptions, those anomalies that require our attention. And you know something? That's old tech. Because if you already know what are those conditions you're looking for, and in many cases you already know how you need to respond to those conditions, or at the very least who needs to be told about them, once again, let's automate that process. So let's take a look at a scenario in that vein, parts. Parts are required for your service techs, and sometimes parts get delayed, sometimes you run out of parts. So again, consider the following questions. Whose job is it to review the status of parts that are needed for a job? And beyond that, how often does a person do that review? Once a day, every couple of hours, every hour, every 30 minutes? You know, typically inventory needs to be monitored on a fairly frequent basis. And if an item is delayed, if a part drops below its reorder level, whose job is it to decide whether a purchase order should be created? And then, even once that PO is created, whose job is it to review that purchase order and either approve it or reject it? Once it's approved, whose job is it to submit it to the corresponding vendor? And then, last but not least, whose job is it to watch to make sure those purchased items actually arrive on time? Well, when it comes to questions like whose job is it, such as the dozen or so questions that we just asked about invoicing and about watching over parts, if the question is whose job is it, we'd recommend that the answer be SedonaSync. It's SedonaSync's job because SedonaSync automatically and continually monitors your SedonaOffice activities, transactions, exceptions, anomalies. It looks for pain points. And then when it finds that those occur, SedonaSync automatically responds by taking 4 actions. And you can see them listed at the bottom of the slide. Tell people about it. Deliver the right information to the right documents. If an order's been placed, let's generate an invoice automatically and send it off to the corresponding client. Does additional research need to get done? You know, if a client is delinquent in paying for their invoices, maybe we should have Sync automatically generate an AR aging report for that client and deliver that report to the client's sales rep. And then finally, sometimes conditions actually warrant the creation of activities or actions or updates within SedonaOffice itself, and that's what Sync does. So let me now paint for you the components of SedonaSync, beginning with its ability to look into SedonaOffice for any business conditions, exceptions, and anomalies that are important to you. Now, out of the box, Sync comes with a nice collection of pre-configured events. We'll look at those a little bit later on in today's conversation. But I do just want to repeat one statement: any business conditions that are important to you. So if you wonder, well, I wonder if SedonaSync could identify XYZ, I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is yes. So when those conditions are found to occur, when we have a new service ticket, when a part is delayed, typically the first thing that folks want to do, tell someone about it, send alerts. And Sync can send alerts via a number of different methods, including email, certainly still number 1 on people's delivery, but rapidly approaching number 2, send a text message to my cell phone. And also a third method, automatically put this alert information into a dynamically updated web dashboard. So I can just look at a web page and see what's the status of, for example, today's service tickets. Now, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the information that needs to be delivered is more than just a simple little email or text message. If an order has been placed and we need to generate an invoice, well, let's generate that using our standard invoice form, and let's output it in PDF format, something that looks professional, and deliver that automatically to the corresponding customer. But with forms and documents also come reports and analytics. So whether it's Crystal reports, SSRS, or other reporting solutions, again, sometimes the information that needs to get delivered is actually an analytical report, such as that AR aging report for the delinquent customer, or a stock status report if we recognize that there are items that need to be ordered. And when it comes to informing people, it is true, sometimes a picture really is worth 1,000 words. Yeah, I could use SedonaSync to generate a 10-page report and send it to you, or I could use SedonaSync to generate a nice looking bar chart or pie chart, maybe showing me customers who have changed their buying habits. I don't want to see pages and pages of transactional level details. What I would like is perhaps a nice bar chart showing that particular customer's sales over the last 60, 90, or 180 days. And then the final component of SedonaSync is actually taking an action on the business condition that has occurred. If a client is delinquent in their payments, let's have Sync put them on credit hold. If an item drops below its reorder level, let's consider using Sync to actually create a purchase order for that item. Okay, so you've now got a concept of what it is SedonaSync consists of. What I'd like to do now is share with you the top 10 uses of SedonaSync by organizations like yours, starting with increasing your service tech's awareness. You know, I always say when it comes to thinking about SedonaSync, the thing to ask yourself is this: when was the last time I said, if only I had known? If only I had known that that new ticket had been logged for a major client of ours, that it was a system down, it was a critical issue, we would have done something about it, we would have escalated it. If only we had known that this item was approaching its reorder level, we would have reordered it sooner and wouldn't be in the stock outage situation we're in today. Now, the picture that you're looking at on the current slide is actually the alert generated by SedonaSync. So this is an alert about, as you can see, a new sprinkler inspection ticket, automatically generated and delivered by SedonaSync to the appropriate people. Okay. Now, let's talk about capturing ticket anomalies. Here we've got an example of an event, and here we're actually looking right into the SedonaSync application itself, looking at open tickets that are older than X number of days. And you can see over on the right-hand side of this illustration that we're going to have SedonaSync look for tickets that have been open for more than 30 days. 30 days too long for you? Easy. You can change that to 15 days, 7 days, whatever you like. Everything in SedonaSync is based upon permissions and authorizations, and as you'll see throughout the application, it's all designed around a wizard. So not only do you get a robust collection of pre-configured events, but you can also easily modify and customize them yourself. Since we've got this particular screen up, I just want to point out down under deliverables for this event, we can see that this event is sending alerts via all three methods: email, text message, also known as SMS, as well as webcast, which are those dynamic web dashboards. And Wayne,
hey, Don,
as I mentioned earlier, if you feel like jumping in, I could sense it, Wayne. I could absolutely sense it. So please do. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to point out, so, you know, obviously this class is geared toward existing and new users, and this kind of comment is really more toward the existing users. This screenshot you're looking at is the new version 10 of SedonaSync. I personally have been using SedonaSync since Don's very first presentation at the SedonaOffice conference years ago. I was on the user side at that time. I was hooked. We immediately saw the benefit to our company as far as like notifications, reports, and automation. But if you're familiar with the older system, it was a little bit clunky. There was like 3 different modules and stuff that were involved in it. This is the new version. It's all in one. It's got a nice new web GUI to it. So if you're the type of person that likes to, you know, tinker and build your own events, this is what you have to look forward to. And I've been playing with it now for a while, and I love it.
Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate that very much. And we'll be going into the live application once we go through a few more scenarios. So I will show you not just screenshots, but I'll be taking you into the live app itself. All right, so let's talk about some other typical challenges that SedonaOffice customers like yourselves face, which is multi-step jobs. You know, if a job has to be worked on by one person, they finish. It needs to go on to the next person, they finish, and on to the next person. A key part of that is not letting that job sit between people, because that's lost time, lost productivity, and it can yield nothing but bad results. So SedonaSync watches over those jobs. If a job is stalled, if it's ready to move on to the next person, as soon as that initial person is done with it, SedonaSync recognizes it and then can pass that information on to the next person in the process of working that job. Now, I actually want to take you here into the actual design of an alert message in SedonaSync. That's the screenshot that we're looking at here. And I know Wayne mentioned, for those of you who've worked with the older versions of SedonaSync, you know, some of the some of the what's new in terms of the user interface. I'll tell you honestly, the option to design attractive looking email alert messages, my favorite thing in the entire new version of SedonaSync. Because here you're looking at an email. This is an HTML format. It contains the bold group logo. It contains a table in it that's actually going to list for me those parts that have not arrived yet. And just looking at that a little bit further, that area in light green that shows all of the details, the job code, creation date, etc., that's going to be automatically repeated for each job code and part that meets this event's criteria. I'll take you into the actual designer. You don't have to know how to write HTML syntax or any kind of programming whatsoever to create really cool and attractive looking alert messages.
Can I throw in a plug on that one you had up on the screen?
Yep.
That one you just demoed is actually one of my favorite new ones we're offering with the version 10 upgrade. This particular event basically scans your schedule, looks for jobs that are coming up in an X amount of days, and lets you know if all the parts have been received or not, so that you have adequate notice to be able to either reschedule an appointment or notify someone of back ordered parts, instead of last minute the text showing up and going, well, I don't have everything, and having to scramble at the last minute. This is one of my favorite new ones.
I have to admit, Wayne, I like this very much myself. It's one of the reasons why I chose it as one to illustrate, because I think it contains just terrific data summarized perfectly. So, yeah, thank you very much for putting that into this new event pack. And I should mention that events that you're looking at here, you get them automatically with SedonaSync. If you're an existing SedonaSync customer, you're going to get these. If you're going to be a new customer, you're going to get these. So I always like to emphasize SedonaSync isn't just a tool. It's a tool with pre-built solutions inside it. Now, earlier on, I talked about out-of-stock situations. So I actually wanted to take an opportunity here to show how SedonaSync itself provides a wizard to allow you to specify the exact conditions that have to meet your criteria. Because when I say out of stock, that might mean something to me that's somewhat different to you, that's something different to another person. And so here, once again, we're looking at a plain English wizard-driven editor in SedonaSync that allows you to specify the precise conditions that you're looking for. And Wayne, it looks like we've got some cool conditions here. I'm going to let you speak to those because you know them better than I.
Well, I mean, in this particular event, obviously, the idea was it's letting you know this is the BAS filters for the low stock report. So there's a lot of tools in SedonaOffice where, like, it can automatically generate a PO to bring your warehouses up to a min or a max. These are great and excellent tools in SedonaOffice. One of the downsides, and kind of a reoccurring theme through a lot of these events you're seeing today, is someone still has to go and look to see if it's time. I'll generate my PO to see what everything needs to be brought up, and then I make a decision, is this really a good time for me to do it or not? Or no, I don't really need those parts right away. What these events are doing in this particular one is it's scanning for your active warehouses, what's the current stock, what's the min set to, so that it can send you, here's all the ones that are in your warehouse, here's where you're currently at, and here's where it should be at, so that you know if it's worth the while to go through and generate the PO. This particular one also will let you know who the primary supplier or vendor is, so that if you wanted to generate the PO for, brand A versus dealers B, you can pick and choose, and it tells you in advance so that you don't have to go through the SedonaOffice processes to see if it's worthwhile.
Fantastic. Thanks, Wayne. And I noticed we'd gotten a question about upgrading to the new version. I'm going to hold that till the end. The good news is that it's a very easy upgrade from your current version of SedonaSync to the current or version 10 release. All right, so let's continue. Stalled jobs. Again, just another look at a sample email alert message. Again, in this case, including an HTML table, and just looking at those time intervals. I think that's the key thing for me. It's always been the key thing about the sync technology, which is, sure, you can run reports. Sure, you can manually execute analytics or queries to retrieve data from the SedonaOffice system, but it requires you to have to proactively go in and request that data. And if you know what information you want and you know how often you need it, automating that process to me is the obvious path. Okay. So let's move on. I think this is one of Wayne's favorite events of all, so I'm not even going to introduce this. Wayne, I'm going to leave it entirely to you.
Well, it is definitely, well, they're all my favorites, but this is one of the ones that I'm just most excited about. Historically, PDF attachments on syncs have been a huge demand from our users. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but the previous version of SedonaSync, you had to have crystal reports to create the dynamic PDF attachments. That required the purchasing of another software, it required learning another software. What I was excited most about with the version 10 was you no longer need to have crystal reports. You can actually use the SSRS, which is part of the SQL server, which if you're a SedonaOffice user, you've already got. You might need the licensing for it, but you've already got the software to generate the reports. So finally, we can provide a default PDF invoice attachment, something that has been a huge want from our customer base for years. It's a standard looking invoice. It's not, this is the basics, you know, just the analogy that I've always used is like the SedonaSync is GM, we're the GMC, and OPT is the Cadillac. You know, we'll give you the basics, you know, but when you want the super fancy stuff, you know, you go to our partners, and that's when you get that next level type of equipment. But we will now be able to provide, you know, the very basic, you know, standard PDF attachment invoice sync, which is huge because we have not been able to do it on previous versions of sync.
Perfect. Thanks so much for taking that one, Wayne. I'm glad you did. All right. Let's take a look at some other examples that we have here. SedonaSync following up on past due clients again. You know, invoicing is great, but unless the money comes in, that's not so good. There's a great statistic. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You can measure it. It's called DSO, and it stands for Days Sales Outstanding. It really reflects the health of the accounts receivable within an organization, and SedonaSync is great at reducing DSO. You know, when an invoice is coming due, let's have Sync automatically give the customer a heads up. On the day before it's due, let's have Sync send another one. On the day it's due, let's have Sync send another one. Perhaps then when it becomes, if and when it becomes past due, let's have Sync continue to remind people. You know, sometimes what you really want out of Sync is you want it to be the pest. You want it to be that tap on the shoulder, whether it's to your customers, your own staff, to say, hey, this requires your attention.
What's particularly nice about that event too, the one that was just on the screen, is it's a series of actually 5 syncs put together. This is not a statement as much as a collection letter type of a format. And it'll list all the open invoices for a customer, but it'll give you the text based on the oldest bucket. So if you've got like 10 open invoices and, you know, all of them are in 30, but one's in 120, they're going to get the 120 verbiage, but see all 10 invoices, which is really, really nice because then you can customize your verbiage for each of your 5 collection buckets.
That is awfully nice. I like that. And the fact that Sync can group those invoices together, whether it's by customer or by account manager, it just means, again, you know, deliver to people only the needles from the haystack and not the entire haystack. All right. Just in terms of using SedonaSync to identify really key KPIs, key performance indicators. So in this case, looking at technician's billable rate, identifying if that rate is below certain accepted thresholds. Again, this certainly does come under the heading of whether you want to call it exception management, anomalies, or just looking at those trends in business that fall above or below acceptable operating parameters. And I have to say, Wayne, again, just kudos to you on the design of this event. I like the fact that this is really showing me very meaningful metrics. It's looking at averages, looking at average travel time, and other data that we're not even seeing in this particular screenshot.
I'm blushing.
All right. Oh, don't blush, don't blush. You're deserving of all credit. So finally, and I think one of the things that often flies under the radar with SedonaSync is the fact that it can tell you, your colleagues, your customers, whenever critical information in SedonaOffice has changed. If an appointment has changed, its date or time, any field of data within the SedonaOffice application, that's really of great importance to you and the operations of your business. You can tell SedonaSync to monitor that field or fields, plural, if they've changed. And SedonaSync will even tell you not only that value has changed, but it'll tell you what it changed from and to. Okay. So we've talked about SedonaSync, the application. We've shared with you 10 top use scenarios. So now let's jump into the application itself so that you can see it for yourself. So let's take a look. I might need to re-log in. Let's see if SedonaSync requires me to do so. Yep, I figured it would be. I have my timeout set to about 20 minutes. I really do need to change that so it doesn't require me to re-log in, but that's okay. It'll take me just a second or two to do so here as my system refreshes its view. There we go. All right. So let me make a couple of general words about SedonaSync as I'm logging into the application. The user interface is 100% web browser. So again, as Wayne alluded to earlier, just this single window that you're logging into to keep an eye on everything that SedonaSync is doing. Whether it's to see what events are set up, to make changes to those events, to create new events, or perhaps even monitor the status of existing events. They are all done from here. This is version 10 of SedonaSync. It is a 100% .NET-based application. It stores its data in a Microsoft SQL Server database. So let's take a look at some of the pre-configured events that we've been talking about over the last few minutes. So as we're looking at here, and you heard Wayne refer to a little bit ago, the different alerts and events that have to do around AR collections and the different buckets, and how the alert messages can be tailored based upon which of those buckets overdue invoices fall into. Let's scroll a little bit further in this list. We can see additional events from the automatic delivery of invoices, item stock levels below their minimum quantity per warehouse, and of course, looking at the status of jobs. And let's continue a little bit further along in this list. Service-related events. I want to take a pause to talk about those. So everything from new service tickets that are created to next day appointment reminders, those tickets that are older than X number of days, and even changes to an inspection or other type of appointment. I think there are even a final couple, even on this fourth window. Service technicians who are on their way, that weekly tech report, and then a next day schedule alert that goes out. Wayne, any specific comments you'd like to make about these, or shall I go in and pull down into one of them?
I could fill in for a half an hour on these. So for those of you that know me, my strongest side of the industry has always been in the service side. And not only did I adopt Sync from the very beginning, but both companies I've worked for adopted the FSUs as well. And a lot of these service events that you're seeing were designed specifically to complement, the FSU. They don't have to have them, but some of them really kind of make sense for it. There's a suite of 3 of them, which were probably the first things I created back in the day, that were designed to work with the service. So when a customer calls in and creates a service ticket, sends out a little confirmation notice, saying, hey, just wanted to thank you for talking to Wayne today. Just wanted to confirm this is the address, this is the date, and this is what we understood your problem to be. If we got anything wrong, let us know. But the most important thing about that particular event that I cannot stress enough is at the very, very bottom of it, it would say, oh, and by the way, your trip charge is this, and then includes this, and it's billed at this afterwards. Because I would hate those phone calls that I would inevitably get saying, I didn't know there was a charge for you to come out. Then there's a next day reminder, just reminding the customer, hey, we'll see you tomorrow. If you need to reschedule, let us know. So you don't have to worry about your text running out there and not having, you know, the customer there. And then the nicest part of that is an improved version of my third one. So the idea is that the tech's using the FSU and they press that they're dispatched for the service ticket. SedonaSync sees it, the dispatch, and in version 9 would email the customer to say, hey, the technician's on their way. But the new version 10 takes advantage of the new texting feature. So now instead of looking at the email address that's on the service ticket, it looks at the phone number that's on the service ticket and will text the customer that the tech is on their way. Loved that new feature. That was really slick. Yeah, those are.
And you know, since you've been talking a little bit about that new service ticket, I went into it briefly. Let's go back into it and take a little bit of a deeper dive into that one specific example. So for those of you who are existing SedonaSync users and are familiar with and perhaps not overly fond of having to bounce between multiple modules, screens, etc., everything that you need in the design of an event, as they're called in SedonaSync, are done from this one window. The 5 main components of each event are listed on the left-hand side, starting with the name and some general details about the particular event that we have displayed. Here, new service tickets. And I just want to touch upon a couple of the more interesting aspects of SedonaSync. And one of my favorites is the checkbox here called repeat notification for triggered items, because it harkens to something I mentioned earlier. I talked about customers who are delinquent in paying for their invoices. And if they are, you want to keep on tapping them on their shoulder, or at least you want SedonaSync to keep on doing so until those invoices are paid. So for certain events, you actually want to enable this function called repeat notification. Gosh darn it, keep on pestering them until that situation is taken care of. You'll notice this option is not checked for this option, new service ticket created. Because once I tell one or more people about a new service ticket, I don't need to tell them again about that same ticket. The schedule of an event. This event is running every 30 minutes. And again, to me, one of the key aspects of SedonaSync is the fact that different business activities have different levels of time criticality associated with them. There are some conditions that are so time sensitive that you need SedonaSync to be monitoring them on practically a continuous basis, perhaps even every minute. Now, new service tickets, probably not necessary to monitor for those every minute or every 5 minutes, maybe every 30 minutes is suffice. If I'm using Sync to look at a technician's billable rate, well, I probably want to look at that billable rate over a period of a week. So in that case, this particular event might run every Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning. I might also look like SedonaSync to look at activities over the past month. So we can run events on the first of the month, the last of a month, or perhaps right in the middle of a month. So all of those scheduling frequencies are available on an event-by-event basis, but even goes beyond that. You'll notice under scheduling information, you're actually able to identify the days of the week. After all, if no one's going to be in the office on a Saturday or Sunday, there's probably no reason to send them an alert on those days. If we're checking for new service tickets every 30 minutes, well, are we checking 24 hours a day or perhaps only during work hours between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.? SedonaSync even goes so far as to allow each alert recipient, which we refer to as a subscriber, to specify their work versus non-work delivery addresses. For me, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, I want to receive email alerts at my work email address. But on Saturdays, Sundays, and before or after work hours, I actually prefer to be notified at my personal or Gmail email address. You can even identify those dates that are holidays for your organization. Now let's move down to the third component of every event, referred to as the event's trigger. Triggers in version 10 of SedonaSync have been greatly enhanced. Prior to version 10, the only kind of trigger that was supported was a database query through a technology called ODBC. It's a Microsoft standard, stands for Open Database Connectivity. In version 10, we still do support that connection method, but we've also added .NET Database Provider, which is exponentially faster and more efficient than ODBC. We've also added OLADB, another standard database connection method. But on top of all of those, very importantly, we've also added integration via what are called web services. You might be familiar, might have heard of web services such as REST. There's a REST API. Microsoft has a SOAP API. The most popular of web services is one called REST. It's an API that is supported not only for on-prem applications, but also allows Sync to connect to cloud-based or hosted apps. And so this really expands your use today and in the future of SedonaSync, that you're not just limited to using it to monitor on-prem SedonaOffice data, but also use SedonaSync to monitor cloud-based application data. Now, just for the sake of timing, I'm not going to go into the details of trigger design. Let me just say, you saw an example of one in the PowerPoint a little bit ago, where we looked at identifying items that had dropped below their reorder level. The query designer is completely wizard-driven, no programming expertise necessary. So let's drop down to deliverables. And this is that broad category of what do we want an event to do when and if its conditions are met. And you'll see that we separate these deliverables into three categories. First of all, the content. Do we want SedonaSync to pick up reports like that invoice that Wayne mentioned earlier? Do we want Sync to pick up a chart, bar chart, or pie chart and deliver that as part of the alert message? The delivery methods. As we mentioned, email, text, and webcast. Let's take a moment to look at a couple of these. We'll start off with email. And it reminds me, I've already got an email. Very true you are, SedonaSync. Thanks very much for the reminder. So here is the window for designing the outgoing email alert message. What you see here, what was absolutely missing in previous versions of SedonaSync, is a nice Microsoft Word-like interface where you can do such things as insert tables. You can specify fonts and formats and colors. You can embed graphics. And I know we took a look at this as Wayne was speaking earlier, but that ever valuable text at the bottom of an alert message to say, by the way, should service go beyond the included time, you will be billed at this rate in these billing increments. So for those of you who'd like to design your own alerts and attractive looking alert messages, version 10 of SedonaSync makes that possible. But we also said that this alert is also sending a text or SMS message. And Wayne was referring to that as well just a few minutes ago. Naturally, the alert message here is going to be a fair bit shorter than the email. In most cases, what I've seen thus far with version 10 of Sync is that a lot of folks now use text message to give people that instant heads up. Here's the situation that occurred. Now, if you want more details, see the email that was sent to your account. So I find that text messaging and email are really working in concert in version 10. All right, and let's drop down now to the very last component of our event, which is its alert recipients or subscribers. Subscribers are actually divided into two groups in Sync. The first group allows you to specify certain individuals or groups who are always going to be notified about this event. And you'll notice in my case, I've chosen to notify my customer service team. And by the way, these are all definable by you, as well as myself. And maybe for myself, I want to be notified not just via email, but also by dynamic web dashboard. So for each of those people or groups, you can choose to have them notified via one or more methods. But let's take a look at this. So when a new service ticket is created, that's good to notify service, good to notify me, but maybe there's some additional people whom I wish to notify. The obvious one is the customer. If a new ticket has been created, let's make sure to notify the customer associated with that ticket. And that's why Sync also supports advanced subscribers. That is notifying one or more people who are related to or associated with the records that meet this event's criteria. If there are 10 new tickets, let's make sure to notify, yep, our customer service team, yep, Don Farber, but let's also make sure to notify the customer associated with each of those tickets. Okay, so you've got a sense now for the SedonaSync application. So let me just show one more item before we jump into our PowerPoint for a few last words. And I know you've seen this a couple of times now, but I just want to kind of bring it all home. Here's the alert message as generated by SedonaSync with all of the appropriate information filled in, the customer's details, the details about the service ticket that has just been logged, and certainly that ever so enjoyable part for Wayne, where we make sure to tell the customer that, by the way, there may be a charge associated with this service. Okay, so let's jump back into our presentation for just a couple of last concepts and then leave time to answer any questions that have come up. And I want to share two statistics with you. And the first is this one. SedonaSync is a set it and forget it type of technology. What I mean by that is this. Once it's installed, once you tell Sync what business conditions you want it to look for, new service tickets, a delay to a part, inventory that's running low, a technician whose billable rate is too low, once you identify those and turn them on, SedonaSync simply runs by itself in a lights out processing environment. And that's where I come back to that analogy of SedonaSync being like a smoke detector for your business data. You set it up, you turn it on, and you walk away from it. And in today's world, we're all being tasked to do more with fewer resources. The concept that you can bring a new technology into your organization and be able to say to your IT staff, guess what, guys? Once we get this set up, we turn it on, you're not going to have to be logging on to this on a daily, weekly, or perhaps even monthly basis, because like a smoke detector, it just sits out there, constantly monitoring and responding to business conditions. And in response to someone who is saying to me right now, prove it, Don, the proof is actually right in front of you. There are over 12,000 organizations worldwide using the Sync technology. And speaking from our perspective of the support calls that we get about the Sync technology, our support staff receives fewer than 6 incoming support requests a day. That really is the proof that with SedonaSync, once you have it up and running, you're not having to go into it, to manage it, to maintain it. The best quote that I ever heard from a Sync customer, and I was present, it was an interview that was being moderated by an industry analyst. The analyst turned to the customer we were with and said, Tony, if you could say just one thing about the Sync technology, what would it be? And he thought for a moment, and his answer was, and I quote, it just works. And at first, I have to admit, I was a little disappointed that his answer wasn't more grandiose, but then I realized that's in fact what you want from any software application. Bottom line, you install it, configure it, turn it on, and it just works. So, final concept is this. Over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of analysis, surveys of users of the Sync technology to identify how they're using it. And what we have found on average is that for a typical organization, for one of their staff members who's involved in ERP and customer service, and I'm talking here your typical SedonaOffice user, that Sync is able to automate an average of 20 minutes worth of a person's workday, simply by automatically doing those tasks that are currently being done manually. The issuing of service tickets, the generation and delivery of reports, the automatic generation and delivery of invoices, etc. 20 minutes per user a day saved by SedonaSync. And if you're looking at just 6 SedonaOffice users at the end of a year, you're actually looking at recouping 66 days worth of employee time. And that's time that you can put to better use. That's where that time that gets spent on activities that uniquely require the human brain comes into play. Use that time to do things that cannot be automated through software. Use that to grow your business, to improve customer service, to do those things that you don't have the time to do today. All right. I wanted to leave right about 10 minutes to handle any questions and answers. I know the initial question that I want to answer because I took a peek at the Q&A dialogue a few moments ago, which is, how do I, as an existing SedonaSync user, upgrade to version 10? So let me answer that question. The only requirements for upgrading to version 10 are as follows. First, that you have to be currently running either version 8 or version 9 of SedonaSync. And I think that covers just about everyone. The only other requirement is that you must currently be running SedonaSync in a SQL Server database environment. As you might be aware, in earlier versions of SedonaSync, when it was installed, it actually stored its data in a collection of Microsoft Access databases. And in version 10, we support only Microsoft SQL Server as its database. Now in version 8 and version 9, if you go to the SedonaSync programs group, you'll see an option called Migrate My Sync Database to SQL Server. And it is a one-click option. You choose that option, you fill in the details about your SQL instance, and then you hit OK. And in typically just a couple of minutes, your database is upgraded from the old Access to SQL Server. At that point, you are now ready to migrate to version 10. You can install version 10 right on top of your version 9 or version 8 installation. There's, of course, documentation to guide you through all of those steps. I encourage you to take a look at system requirements, etc. Those are all in our online manuals. The great news here is that everything that you have configured in version 8 and version 9, your queries, your events, your reports, your subscribers, those are all carried through to version 10. So there's nothing that you have to reconfigure. Your events will work out of the box. But of course, as Wayne mentioned, you might want to take advantage of some of those new features in version 10, whether it's the ability to send alerts via text, the ability to have Sync automatically generate and deliver SSRS reports and documents like your invoice form, or for that matter, simply being able to go into your existing email alerts and be able to easily tailor them with the new wizard-driven HTML editor, that word-like editor I showed you previously. So the upgrade is simply that process. So with that, let me stop talking. And Wayne, I'll give you a chance, and we'll also answer any other questions that have come in.
Yeah,
You pretty much covered everything.
All those are coming in. Sorry about that. I'm going to throw up a quick poll here that I forgot to launch in the beginning. So I'm going to launch that right now. And basically the question is, are you a current SedonaSync customer? Give that a couple seconds to run, and then while we have some questions flowing, and then I'll let Wayne take over there.
No need to let me take over. Don did such a great job. I'm just excited. I mean, the version 10 is a lot easier to use. It's a lot more intuitive. The texting feature is great. The PDF through the SQL instead of the Crystal reports is great. It's great.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Wayne. You won't get any argument out of me, certainly. But, you know, I will mention a couple other items just because we actually didn't have time to cover them all. One of the little things that I really love about the new version, and Wayne, you said something that actually triggered it in my mind, which is testing an event. So in version 10, there's an option called Run My Event Now. Now that option did exist in preceding versions, but here's the thing. In preceding versions, you could run the event, but you had to wait until the email actually made it into your email box in order to see it, in order to review it, etc. Now, the monitor part of SedonaSync has also been dramatically enhanced in version 10. From the monitor, you can actually see the text of the alerts as they're delivered. And I know it sounds like a small item, but being able to just run an event, not have to worry about waiting for it to make your way into the email, just go right into the monitor module, see the actual HTML, or if you wish, plain text email that was sent directly from the monitor is to me a great new feature. Along with that, again, for those existing SedonaSync users, the monitor showed you every bit of history that has ever existed in SedonaSync. And while that may sound good, once you've been running SedonaSync for a few weeks, months, or years, that display can get pretty massive. In the old SedonaSync, there was no way to restrict your vision, to say, show me only those events that triggered today, over the last hour, last week, or this month. And in the new sync, you actually have those selection criteria. So you don't have to wade through enormous history to find just the individual events that have been triggered. And along that same line, throughout the sync application, is the ability to do searching. So for those of you who do want to roll up your sleeves and want to be able to design or perhaps customize your own queries, and you're looking for a specific field, a field named phone number or a field named billable rate, the ability to go into sync and say search on phone, search on billable, any field of data, any table of data in the SedonaOffice application. So a lot of tools just to make your design of queries and events, their components easier, even to the point of having copy and paste buttons throughout the sync application. So although there are some very big picture changes in version 10 of Sync, for me, I think for Wayne, and also for a lot of existing customers out there, it's a lot of those small options that just make your day-to-day life of interacting with Sync, especially that setup time, a lot more enjoyable. Okay.
If any of you have sat through my my sync trainings that I get when you first install it, usually at the end I give you all these little like websites to help you, because I am not an HTML expert. I cheat. I use websites. I paste it into there. It tells me the code, and I put it into my thing. The HTML editor that's built into it now renders all of that obsolete, which is also a really, really nice touch.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Wayne. I have to say, speaking just personally, of all the new features put into version 10, I think that might be my favorite, because I had to do the same as you. I never knew how to write HTML syntax, so I was going into a browser and using tools there. So you or I are of the same mindset there. All right, Justin, I think we'll serve that ball back over to your side of the net.
Awesome. So I answered most of the questions. We were running out of time here. So if there's any additional questions, please reach out directly to me. My email address is down here. We can discuss the new version of SedonaSync and also discuss our valued partner, OPT Business Services, to meet all your needs for sync events. They have thousands of pre-canned events already created, and other wraparound services to provide an extended value to not only your business, but also the offering of sync. So we look forward to hearing from you. The new upgrades for SedonaSync are slated for mid to end of July. So again, please reach out to me, and we will have corresponding information with the new upgrades and when that's available. Look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Thank you so much for your time. Don and Wayne, you were fantastic. We appreciate you both. And everyone have a great day.
That's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Take care, and bye-bye.
Talk to you later.